Everyone and their mother has gone to middle school in the last 6 years, so it comes as no surprise that bad things will happen. These are formative and awkward years for most, which leads to many a dark experience and mystery. My name is Ali, obviously, and today we're counting down our top 20 picks for middle school traumas. Number 20, football games. If you weren't involved in actually playing the game, then you were probably behind the school bleachers crying about a girl named Amy like I was. Football games are never a fun experience for anybody and have led to 97% of homicides, suicides, genocides, insecticides, and car accidents in the last year alone. Number 19, blocking Coolmath games. If you have forgotten everything from middle school, then you will probably at the very least remember that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That will go on to remind you of Mrs. Angela's divorce, which she would bring up every day in biology class, the same class, as it turns out, that you used to play Coolmath games. Whether you were beating Kevin's high score in block swords or duck life, it was always a fun time, which is why the source of agony for many prepubescents was the unjust blockage or removal of the domain in its entirety. What the heck, Mr. Hector? It has math in the name. Just cause you're the school's IT guy doesn't give you the right to oppress our only source of peace and joy. Number 18, Mrs. Angela's divorce. It is very sad indeed whenever a marriage doesn't work out, especially if it's your favorite biology teacher, Mrs. Angela. But what makes it even more scarring on an adolescent's mental state is when mention of it is brought up in every lesson of the class. Us kids are just trying to learn about the powerhouse of the cell, not the power the court has to take away your house and your kids. I would honestly feel kind of sorry for the situation, if not for the feeling I would get when she bent over next to me to answer Kevin's question, filling my field of view with that voluptuous dump truck. Number 17, classroom decorations. I can't find pictures or evidence of exactly what I'm thinking of, but there was this one genre of staple-on paper-based wall decorations that every classroom in middle school had. It features children with very round features and exaggerated expressions and is honestly very difficult to describe, but I remember them being everywhere. If anyone has any information about what I'm talking about or any notion or keyword that I could Google to find out what I'm talking about, please let me know. Number 18. Wait, I did. Number 16, H.A.G.S. Picture day at school is always a fun time. Every year I would wear a suit every Friday, and it just so happened that junior year picture day was on a Friday. I was trying to look like a handsome, young Egyptian boy that I am, but instead I looked more like the president of Mexico after eliminating one of his political rivals. After yearbooks are eventually distributed, people usually write on the blank pages at the front and the back to preserve memories of each other. However, the most diabolical and evil thing anybody's ever written in my book is H.A.G.S, H.A.G.S. Just the word itself evokes imagery of disgusting old women in swamps covered in rats. Many people claim that H.A.G.S stands for Have a Great Summer, but what I can definitively say actually stands for Hate Angels, Glorify Satan. Why would you write that in my yearbook, Vanessa? Why? Number 15, Burger King Number 15, McDonald's Sprite. Nothing quite encapsulates the experience of adolescent trauma, much like McDonald's Sprite. Sometimes the machine would inappropriately dispense the incorrect ratio of flavor syrup and soda fluid, but nevertheless, it was always a cosmic experience. Last week, I dropped my Juul in a big vat of McDonald's Sprite, and the green light came on, indicating that the device was now charging. I fished it out with my bare hands and suffered first-degree burns, but when I hit it, it was akin to hitting the fattest roach of my life, and ever since, I have been chasing that same high. Number 14, bad teeth. The last thing you want is somebody to make fun of you for the things that you like. But if anything that brings you joy just results in more humiliation because your pearly whites look more like an 18th century piano, then that might be just what you get. Braces are expensive, but the cost of humiliating yourself and bringing dishonor to your family is a much higher price, which brings us to number 13, headgear. Even scarier than poor dental care is the method by which you fix it. Anyone with braces climbing out of their mouth looks like they've just swallowed an evil Terminator spider at worst, and at best, they look like Jimmy from Ed, Edd n Eddy. Number 12, emo Tumblr girls. The deep web is a dark, scary, and/or dangerous place, which is why so many teenage girls flock to the darkest and scariest place on the dark web, Tumblr.com, riddled with millions of edgy, cringy, SJW, and/or queer rights activist text posts, as well as Sherlock, Doctor Who, Supernatural, and/or Harry Potter gifs. Tumblr really is a hive of scum and/or villainy. However, even worse are the girls you knew in middle school who would regularly peruse the website in search of homoerotic fanfiction and/or obscure fandom-based memes. Number 11, lockers. A good place to store books, an even better place to store people. Number 10, band kids. Every school needs a band to instill spirit and/or enthusiasm, but their real time to shine comes from pep rallies and football games. We all know how those went. They all T-pose and play out-of-key tubas, but at the end of the day, there is no stranger autist than the one with musical talent. Trust me, I know. I'm one of them. I still have nightmares of those disgusting people making out in the practice rooms. However, I must confess that my first kiss was with that Jehovah's Witness girl in the practice room on December 12th, 2012, and it's all been downhill from there. Number 8, waiting in the gym before school. For some reason, schools decide to pick you up at 4:26 a.m. every morning when school doesn't even start for another several hours. Nevertheless, the adults needed a secure location to corral the livestock that was 6th through 3rd grade every morning as busloads of more victims kept coming. Number 7, that one kid who would Naruto run out of the gym when school started. Every school had one of these, and don't even tell me they didn't. There was also an 82% chance that this kid was also a band kid experimenting with the aerodynamics of the notorious sprint every free second he got. At some points, he threatened to enter Mach 2 and was eventually expelled for busting all the windows with his shockwave. Number 6, premature ejaculation. Number 5, Nickelodeon's Worldwide Day of Play. Nothing was more traumatizing in middle school than attempting to escape the misery of reality than kicking back and watching legendary shows like SpongeBob, Danny Phantom, Rugrats, Jimmy Neutron, and or Fairly Odd Parents. But when Nick started the Worldwide Day of Play, it was like losing 5 very close friends in a tragic gasoline fight accident. I struggled physically, emotionally, and or financially for that entire 24-hour period, and being powerless as I was, had no choice but to change to the Disney Channel. To this day, the bellhop from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody is my personal sleep paralysis demon, and occasionally I will see him on the streets out of the corners of my eyes, watching, waiting. Number 4, Accelerated Coordinate Algebra. Although I thought I was always good at math, Mr. Redacted proved otherwise. He was an angry, bearded man whose face was red as a tomato and made even the toughest 7th graders cry in the hallway. To this day, anyone who I talk to about him only solidifies my theory that he was once a denizen of Chinese hell sent to suck the happiness out of the earth, despite the fact that he was neither Chinese nor Asian. Number 3, Scoliosis. Nothing is worse than having a spine, like a pair of iPhone standard issue earbuds. So naturally, when there's a school-wide screenings for spine defects, which forces children to remove their shirts in front of Kevin, it makes everyone really uncomfy. Number 2, crabs in your heat exchanger tubes. The last thing you want in your main heat exchanger condenser tubes are small crabs scuttling about. I opened the main heat exchanger condenser and, alas, inside one of the tubes was a small crab smiling up at me. I picked it up and said, "Tally-ho," and crunched down on it. It cried a single salty tear which fell back into the main heat exchanger condenser tubes and entered the school's condensate system. Mr. Juan Lupis Gonzalez Cristiano Ronaldo Ramirez Martinez, the school janitor, took turbidity tests on the school's condensate system and they were positive. Not even 3 minutes later, we lost all electrical power because Mr. Juan Lupis Gonzalez Cristiano Ronaldo Ramirez Martinez, the school janitor, misheard the announcement and tripped the wrong generator, which caused us to lose all electrical power, including lighting and air conditioning. At first, I was startled by the sudden removal of light, and in my fervor, I dropped the crab. In the darkness, I heard the clicks of him running away with his tiny crab feet like Mr. Krabs himself. Then, because we didn't have air conditioning, I started sweating profusely, and my sweat molecules fell right into the main heat exchanger condenser, which furthered the loss of electrical power. Who would have known such a small creature of the night could cause such mayhem and or destruction from such a simple little chomp? And before we get to our number 1 spot, here are some honorable mentions. Delusions of grandeur, bus riders versus car riders, crush lists, girls' locker rooms, boys' locker rooms. And coming in at the number 1 spot, number 1, the existential agony of simply existing. As soon as object permanence is eroded from our brains, the idea of existing in a much larger world than just yourself is a bone-chilling realization. Add to that fact that the idea that non-existence is just as much of a threat as Kevin, and you start to develop silly ideas of meaning, purpose, the afterlife, and or whether or not the Naruto run is actually more aerodynamic than you thought and worth trying. Thank you all so much. please don't forget to subscribe and like the video for more top 20 bone-chilling, dangerous, scary, and or mind-melting top 20 lists.